Kunjali Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Madhava Kunjabi Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Ballabha Yasodanandana Brajajanarandana Yasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jamana Tiravana Chari Jamana Tiravana Chadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jasadanandana Brajajanarandana Jasadanandana Brajajanarandana Jamana Tiravanachari Jamana Tiravana Chadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Madhava Kunjabihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Madhava Kunjabihari Jayo Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajagacharya Astapati Srimad His Divine Grace Sri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Gaur Premanandi. Oh, the long one. Is it this long verse 35 through 39? 40 to 43. Okay, because the bookmark is. Read it? Oh, I see. There's no purport. Okay, 40. There's no purport. Let me see. 41 has a short purport. So we're ending with 41, yes? So let's chant 41, and then I'll go back and read the translation for everything. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading Canto 6, Chapter 4, Text 41 from the Hansaguya Prayers. Na kinchano dirayatum asakativriya muda. Are we looking at the same verse? Text 41. Yes? Text 41. No, there's no purport for 40. So it's 41. And then we'll go back and read 40, etc. Okay? Apurita mano dvarayar radinya iva jirharai. Try again a couple more times because it didn't do so well. Na kanchana dirayatum asakativ tivraya muda. Apurita mano dvarayar radinya iva nirjarai. Kinchano dirayatum asakat tivraya muda. Apurita mano dvarayar Eva Ladies. Na, not. Kinchana, anything. Udirayatum, to speak. Ashakat, he was able. Tivraya, by very great. Muddha, happiness. Apurita, filled. Manadvarai, by the senses. Radinya, the rivers. Iva, like near Jarai by torrents from the mountains. So I'm going to read the translation starting back at text 35 till this one. Text 35. Sri Shukadev Goswami said the Supreme Personality Godhead Hari, who is extremely affectionate to his devotees, was very pleased by the prayers offered by Daksha, and thus he appeared at that holy place known as Agha Marshana. Oh, Maharaj Parikshit, best of the Kuru dynasty, the Lord's lotus feet rested on the shoulders of his carrier Garuda, and he appeared with 8 long, mighty, very beautiful arms. In his hands he held a disc, a conch shell, sword, shield, arrow, bow, rope, and club. In each hand a different weapon, all brilliantly shining. His garments were yellow and his bodily hue deep bluish. His eyes and face were very cheerful, and from his neck to his feet hung a long garland of flowers. His chest was decorated with a Kaustubha jewel and the mark of Srivatsa. On his head was a gorgeous round helmet, and his ears were decorated with earrings resembling sharks. All these ornaments were uncommonly beautiful. The Lord wore a golden belt on his waist, bracelets on his arms, rings on his fingers, and ankle bells on his feet. Thus, decorated by various ornaments, Lord Hari, who is attractive to all the living entities of the 3 worlds, is known as Purushottama, the best personality. He was accompanied by great devotees like Narada, Nanda, and all the principal demigods led by the heavenly king Indra, and the residents of various upper planetary systems, such as Siddhaloka, Gandharvaloka, and Charanaloka, situated in both sides of the Lord and behind him as well. These devotees offered him prayers continuously. Quite a scene, huh? Quite a scene. Not only he has 8 weapons in his hands, he has ankle bells on his ankles. Ankle bells usually goes with something other than battle, but he's all decked out. Text 40. Seeing that wonderful and effulgent form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Prajapati Daksha was first somewhat afraid. But then he was very pleased to see the Lord, and he fell to the ground like a stick, dandavat, to offer his respects to the Lord. Text 41. As rivers are filled by water flowing from a mountain, all of Daksha's senses were filled with pleasure. Because of his highly elevated happiness, Daksha could not say anything, but simply remained flat on the ground. Purport. When one actually realizes or sees the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is filled with complete happiness. For example, when Dhruva Maharaj saw the Lord in his presence, he said, Swamin Katartosmi Baram Niyache. My dear Lord, I have nothing to ask from you. Now I am completely satisfied. Similarly, when Prajapati Daksha saw the Supreme Lord in his presence, he simply fell flat, unable to speak or ask him for anything. The next few verses are just continuing with his ecstasy, so I'm going to read those. 42. Although Prajapati Daksha could not say anything, When the Lord, who knows everyone's heart, saw his devotee prostrate in that manner and desiring to increase the population, he addressed him as follows. 43. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Oh, most fortunate Prachetasa. Prachetasa. His sons became the Prachetas. Anyway, or from the line of the Prachetas. Because of your great faith in me, you have attained the supreme devotional ecstasy. Indeed, because of your austerities, combined with exalted devotion, your life is now successful. You have achieved complete perfection." Purport. As the Lord himself confirms in Bhagavad Gita 8:15, one reaches the highest perfection when he attains the fortune of realizing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Mamupetya punar janma dukkhalayam ashashvatam napnuvanti mahatmana samsiddhim paramam gata. After attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world, which is full of miseries, because they have attained the highest perfection. Therefore, the Krishna consciousness movement teaches one to follow the path toward the topmost perfection simply by performing devotional service. The story of Daksha is puzzling. Because before he's an offender of Lord Shiva, after this he's an offender of Narada. And yet he's seeing the Supreme Lord and being confirmed by the Supreme Lord that he has achieved complete perfection. Isn't that puzzling? I find it very puzzling. I don't have an answer to that puzzle. To see the Supreme Lord, we heard the Supreme Lord say, there were two factors: his exalted devotion and his austerities. Now, austerities in a life of devotion doesn't need to be extreme, but austerities in minimum, in principle, is to voluntarily accept some inconvenience, that is, restrict the tendency to be an enjoyer of the senses, and accept some inconvenience in the matter of extending the senses out into the world of sense objects, and do so minimally, and do so with the purpose of devotion, whatever that extending of the senses might be. And a willingness to do that, and in a more mature stage, the control of the senses. Just like we read yesterday evening, what Brahma was saying to Krishna, that he had restrained, had withdrawn his mind from any contemplation on material enjoyment. His mind was engaged, his senses were engaged following his mind, but it wasn't with the idea of material enjoyment. That's the austerity part. And it takes some practice, or abhyasa, to go from the conditioned to the freed from conditioning stage. But it's not merely practice, it's practice with the intention of pleasing Krishna, reaching Krishna and pleasing Krishna. Then it becomes nice or sustainable, and it bears fruit. The fruit that comes from bhakti is different than the fruit that comes from sense control without bhakti. The fruit which comes from sense control without bhakti is negation, or moving towards an undifferentiated Brahman position. Because as soon as the differentiated or personal feature of Brahman is concerned, as soon as that personal feature of the person of Brahman, in other words, Bhagavan feature of Brahman is concerned, then there's also automatically, or as a byproduct, or like we were using this term yesterday evening, secondary, Gona Dharma follows Paradharma. Using things of this world, engaging with things of this world is secondary to, and it follows behind Paradharma. So senses then become controlled because one accepts things that are pleasing to Krishna and does not accept things that are not pleasing to Krishna. The devotional compass guides one properly. As Prabhupada is pointing out in the purport that we read, there's a happiness, or more profoundly, there's an ecstasy that comes from a direct personal connection with Krishna. I'll say it again. There's an ecstasy or a transcendental happiness that is a byproduct of, or is a subset of, direct experience of Krishna, which Prahlad Maharaj felt, an ecstasy, and here Daksha is feeling, to the point where he's speechless. He can't say anything. Dhruva was able to say something. He was also speechless, but Lord Vishnu touched his head with his conch shell, and then he was able to speak. Or Prahlad Maharaj was able to speak when Lord Nrsingadev placed his paw on his head. So there's an experience on direct contact with the personality of Godhead. It's a transcendental ecstasy. This is an elaborate topic that's discussed in Brihat Bhagavatamrita. An elaborate topic of the distinction between meditation upon the Lord and seeing the Lord. Because seeing the Lord is not possible with material senses. I'll say it again. Seeing the Lord is not possible with material senses. However, when senses become surcharged with prema, then one can see the Lord. Because even when Krishna made his appearance, or Ramachandra, or the forms of the Lord who made their appearance in this world, like Vamana, Sukracharya didn't see with devotion. he had some understanding, whoa, this is Vishnu and he's going to take everything. So he didn't see with devotion. Not at all. There was knowledge. He had some knowledge. But he didn't have devotion. And so he didn't get a nice result. But those that have devotion and the Lord reveals himself, however he chooses to reveal himself, it's very, very ecstatic. Prabhupada told the story, here's the Prabhupada story. Prabhupada told the story of one of his godbrothers, a disciple of Bhakti Siddhanta. When he was a young boy growing up, he had Radha Krishna deities that he worshipped. And in the place where he lived, at a certain point in time, it became extremely cold. And it lasted for days. Extremely cold. And as a young boy, he contracted some kind of fever and some other symptoms of disease. So his parents brought doctors and tried this medicine and so forth and so on. Nothing happened. Nothing changed. Everyone became really worried. And then the boy had a dream. And in the dream, his deity appeared. And his deity said, when the cold weather came, you didn't give me something to stay warm. Bring something so I can stay warm. So immediately, he made some arrangement for a nice chadar for Radha and Krishna. And immediately his fever broke. Contemporary. So when the Lord chooses to interact with his devotees in his deity form, obviously it does something. And supposing one hasn't come to that stage where the Lord shows some kind of miracle. I mean, there's lots of miracle stories. One that I encountered recently, a nice devotee couple somewhere in America, Indian family. The wife has been worshiping Radha Krishna deities in her home for like 13 years, 15 years, something like that. And she's totally devoted to her deities. And she conducts standards of worship like in the temple. So many artis, so many offerings, this and that. And she's the sole person. Her husband isn't involved. She's solely involved. And her nature is, she's gentle and quiet and, somewhat internal in her devotion. In the course of discussion, I forget exactly how it came out. I made some kind of comment like, there must be some attachment that you have for your deity to do like this so consistently for so many years. And she smiled a little bit because she's kind of an internal person and said, just the other day, I'm very regulated in what I do, and when I feed the deities, I remove Krishna's flute and put it over here. And after the offering was made and everything was removed, I went to find the flute and it wasn't there. And I looked at the deity and the deity had his flute. And she said, and there's other exchanges like that over the years. Krishna can reveal himself to whom he wants and when he wants and how he wants. It doesn't mean he's not a person until he reveals himself. Our subjective experience is one thing, but doesn't change his identity as a Supreme Person, recognizing our service unto him. I'm thinking of the deities in Ukraine. There's 25 temples in the Ukraine, and as far as I know, they all have deities. There's the main temple in Kiev, and the place has been vacated for safety of the devotees because there's been explosions near the temple, except for the pujaris, and they're maintaining the deity. And the devotees that have somehow gotten to some other place of safety or there's a little YouTube interview of them, and they plan to go back as soon as the turmoil is over, because they're very attached to their deities. And if they're very attached, despite risks and so forth, their attachment means the deity's attached to them. And that's what we're hearing here about Daksha. It's very strong austerities and his sustained devotion. It's not just the prayers themselves, because we can recite prayers. We recite prayers every day when we sing our Mangal Arti and Guru Puja songs, and etc. The Govinda prayers when we greet the deities. The prayers have, it's one of the 9 processes of bhakti. Prayers have a potency for sure. Just like Brahma's prayers, there's potency. There's some pala stuti at the end of Brahma's prayers. One who hears these prayers, something, something. There's potency in the prayers. There's potency in the process of bhakti, the activities of the process of bhakti, but it's the consciousness behind those prayers or the activities of bhakti that captures the attention and affection of the Supreme Lord, who will choose to reveal himself wherever he chooses to reveal himself. In this case, Daksha got a lot of mercy. Again, the puzzle. How could he, after some time, offend Narada? How could he do that? Something inside wasn't taken away. And that something inside got prompted, and he became angry. Angry to the point where he had the audacity to curse Narada. It's a puzzle. I'm anticipating the question, so I'm preempting the question by saying it's a puzzle. But he's obviously an elevated person. Obviously an elevated person. For the Lord to appear, the Lord to praise him, the Lord to make an arrangement for the fulfillment of his desire, which was a Prajapati type of desire. So a wife was given, and from the wife, it's amazing results. 10,000, 1,000, 60 daughters. So it's not ordinary. I guess a word of encouragement for all of us is, on the one hand, Krishna will show himself more naturally to one who is a pure devotee than one who is a mixed devotee like us. And on the other hand, here's a devotee and he's not, doesn't appear to be pure based upon the behaviors that come next, unless we just want to say, well, apichetsu daracharo, he's a sadhu, cursing Nard is, it's okay, he's a sadhu. Seems to have a problem. I'll see if there's some commentary from our acharyas that explained that puzzle. Because he is a prominent role in this sixth canto. In the fourth canto, it's not that the personality of God had appeared before him because he did austerities and chanted certain prayers and he showed him his form. That's not the Daksha part 1, but here he is, Daksha part 2. He's saying the Supreme Lord is confirming your realization of me is complete. Your devotion is complete. Does anybody here or anybody that's online that knows something our acharyas have written on this topic? I'd very much appreciate hearing. Let's see if there's some discussion. Okay, fine. Fine.
I'm just wondering there, what is differences realization Vishnu or Krishna?
The difference?
Yeah, because many time we are seeing in Bhagavatam, Lord Vishnu came and appear, and we are not seeing Krishna came and appear. Is there any differences? Because many things holding by him, and then mostly we saw Vishnu.
Well, mostly, there's a verse, you can look it up. Canto 3, Chapter 9, Text 11, 3, 9, 11. The verse says, essentially, the Supreme Lord is very kind. He shows that form to his devotee according to his meditation. Or yeyatamam prapadyante. So the reference to seeing Lord Vishnu has to do with the devotion of the person. Seeing Lord Krishna is his special prerogative and special mercy. There's a comment by our, as Krishna says in at the end of the 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, this form that you see, this two-armed form, is rare to see. He can show it, no problem, but he'll show based upon the devotion. And then in scheduled incarnations, according to our Acharya specifically, one cannot see that form without Krishna's mercy. So even demons that saw Krishna's form, they saw Krishna's form because of his mercy, otherwise they couldn't see. Now what they saw when they saw was not the same as what the devotees see. And in some cases, just like with King Muchukunda, Krishna had to reveal who he was because he was a devotee. He wasn't a demon, but he couldn't understand. And then Krishna explained. And then, oh. So there's the answer.
And another question, Maharaj. Daksha Prajapati disrespect the Lord Shiva and he got everything spoiled. And sometimes devotee also fanatically or something they just giving lecture sometime they down the Lord Shivaji. Uh, we Vaishnavas should be respect everybody, you know. Sometimes we see the Lord Shiva in the because of the we saw that scenario, just disrespect the Lord Shiva, he cut his head and everything happened. Uh, as a Param Vaishnava, we should also uh, respect and what level is differences. I understand that.
What was the last part? You spoke swiftly.
Haji?
The
Yes.
last part, say it again because you spoke really swiftly. The
Yeah,
last part.
he's Param Vaishnava.
He's Param Vaishnav,
Yeah,
Lord Shiva.
Lord Shiva. No? And sometimes we join with him to the Sankarsana, he the one of the incarnation from Kamtas. And sometimes he say from the eyebrow of the Lord Brahma. It's the Rudra and Shiva and Shiva Tattva, what is the differences? Because he was the Lord of Daksha Prajapati, the devotee of the Lord Vishnu. Same time, how he couldn't understand about the Lord Shiva as a Param Vaishnava.
Well, you're asking several questions, but one of the questions is the complexity of nomenclature. And then the other question is how Prajapati Daksha couldn't recognize. As you know, Shiva Tattva is very complex. It is said amongst Gaudiya Vaishnava acharyas, two topics are most perplexing, Shiva Tattva and Guru Tattva. And between the two, Guru Tattva is easier to understand. Shiva Tattva is very complex. In short, there are multiple aspects of Lord Shiva present in multiple realms. And the nomenclature gets confusing. And the nomenclature is also not always consistent. Not always consistent between one acharya and another acharya, or between one scriptural text and its own scriptural text. Sometimes the nomenclature is mixed even within the same scripture. It's not consistent. So it's difficult. It adds to the difficulty. So in other words, I've been through this with devotees that are really, really, really careful with reading Prabhupada's books. And over here, certain nomenclature is used, and over there, the same nomenclature is used, but it means something different over there as opposed to over here. Or the same topic is talked about, and a different nomenclature is used over here than the one over there. If we're looking for consistency in nomenclature, we'll be disappointed. Sometimes. And then another acharya will come along and use different nomenclature. And then your head spins. You've probably been through that. I've been through that. And it's especially complicated with Shiva Tattva. Somebody, one Bhakti Vriksha group somewhere, they asked me, could I give a class on Shiva Tattva? And so starting from Brahma Samhita, I did. But then once you start in Brahma Samhita, then there's other references, and it's complicated. Because it's not just Brahma Samhita. That's not the only reference. The Bhagavatam is our Parama Pramana, and it has multiple things to say in multiple places. Like the abode of Lord Shiva, there's like 6 of them. And there's different features of Lord Shiva in each of those 6. And then the nomenclature in this realm where Lord Shiva resides is sometimes this nomenclature, sometimes that. So I can share with you that information. It's easier to send it to you than to recite it all right now. You can look at it, and it's puzzling. It doesn't follow a straight line. The simple point is, Lord, for service, he manifests different features. An easy one, that more common to us is sometimes Advaita Acharya is referred to as Sadashiva. That's puzzling. He's Mahavishnu. Sometimes referred to. So it's Vishnu Tattva, the feature, there's a feature of Lord Shiva that's Vishnu Tattva because there's no contact with Pradhan. But contact with Pradhan, then milk turns into dahi. Then he takes on another name, and he has a residence here with this name, and residence there with a different name, or sometimes the same name, and residence another place, residence another place, another place. He has lots of services and different features of himself. So if you're looking for like a strict use of terminology, you're not going to find it. For the 11 Rudras that went chasing after Brahma, and Brahma said, stop. You go to Mahakalapur, and you'll have your service, you'll call on you then. The Mahakalapur, according to the 5th canto Bhagavatam, is below the 7 planetary systems and above the hellish planets. And there's a Mahakalapur that's the name of the abode of Mahavishnu, because the great time, Mahakala. And there's a third use of that term, Mahakalapur, which is above the 7 above the 7 coverings of the universe, the abode where Gopakumar enters and sees the impersonal feature appearing and then receding and then appearing and then receding, and that region is called Mahakala or Mahakalapur. So the binary processor mind gets bewildered unless you can step back and try to capture the essence. Mahakala means something. Lord Shiva means something. He's auspicious. And his presence creates auspiciousness. And his ideal auspicious gift is to give bhakti. At the same time, he's very merciful and he accepts people that don't have bhakti. But he also gives bhakti. He gives bhakti. He gives bhakti to the prachetas. And they become perfected bhaktas. He's the head of a sampradaya. It's not the Lordship. That head of the sampradaya is not the feature of Lord Shiva who's in charge of the mode of ignorance. It's an aspect of him. So it's the long-winded answer to say it's not easy to give a short answer. And and Daksha, your question about Daksha is similar to the situation here. He's a son of Brahma. He's very qualified in many, many ways. And there's pride. And pride is a disqualification. Because of that pride, he insults Lord Shiva because of pride. He explicitly insulted him. And then the next time around, he didn't even invite him, which is an insult. So he's an elevated person that has some stuff that needs to be purified. That's why he couldn't see. Anything else? Online? Srila Prabhupada ki jai.